Chapter 1. A man with a lock and the past rental sign above the old cobbler's shop came down on a cloudy Thursday morning, and by noon, a new wooden plaque hung crookedly in its place. Hart and 𝐾 locksmith services. No grand opening, no flyers, no social media buzz, just a quiet man with calloused hands and a steel toolbox. Moving in like a shadow. Leo Hart parked his battered truck in front of the shop, engine ticking with exhaustion. He sat for a moment, eyes scanning the main square of Maplewood. It was the kind of town that looked plucked from a postcard, hanging flower baskets on every lamppost, kids zipping past on bicycles, and locals who waved whether they knew you or not. It made his chest ache with something like nostalgia, or maybe just regret. Inside the shop, the air smelled of old wood and dust. Leo pushed open the door and stepped inside, taking stock of the worn counters and pegboards begging to be filled. He ran his fingers across a shelf, picked up a stray screw, and tucked it into his pocket like a reflex. This place wasn't perfect, but it was his clean slate, hard-earned, barely held together, but his. He unpacked slowly. Lock cylinders, tension wrenches, pinning kits. Each tool had its place, each with a memory he didn't care to revisit. The irony wasn't lost on him, making a living off locks after spending years breaking them. But it was this or the slow rot of prison walls again. And he'd promised her he wouldn't go back. As the sun dipped lower, golden light filtered through the shop's dusty front window. Across the square, a small crowd gathered near a vintage coffee cart painted in cheerful teal and mustard yellow. A sign read "Espresso yourself," with chalkboard specials that included things like pumpkin patch latte and maple mocha magic. The cart had fairy lights strung along its awning, and from inside came the hiss of steaming milk and the smell of something sweet and roasted. Leo squinted toward the cart, watching as a woman with a red bandana tied in her curly brown hair handed a coffee to a laughing customer. Her sleeves were rolled up, and her eyes sparkled as she bantered with the crowd. There was something magnetic about her, some mix of grit and warmth, like a fire you didn't know you needed until you stepped close enough to feel it. He didn't know her name yet, but even from a distance, she seemed to belong to this place, to the ease of its mornings and the rhythm of its afternoons. She belonged in a way Leo never had. A kid darted past on a skateboard, and Leo stepped back from the window as if caught staring. He turned back to his tools, sliding a drawer closed with a soft click. Tomorrow, he'd put the open sign in the window. Tomorrow, he'd try to be a part of this town. Quietly, steadily, no attention, no mistakes. Across the square, the woman at the coffee cart laughed again. Leo allowed himself the briefest smile before flicking off the light. Tomorrow. Chapter 2. Steam and sass. Next morning, Leo unlocked his shop just after 7, the cool coastal breeze ruffling his flannel shirt. He moved with quiet precision, arranging tools, aligning key blanks, and testing the new signage with a slight tilt of his head. Satisfied, he flipped the open sign for the first time. Across the square, the coffee cart was already bustling. The smell of espresso drifted through the morning air, tugging at his senses like a memory. Leo glanced up just in time to see her red bandana, hair pinned in a messy twist, denim apron smudged with cinnamon. She moved with ease behind the counter, pouring lattes and calling out names like she'd been doing it forever. He hadn't planned to go over, but his coffee stash was embarrassingly empty, and the noise of that cheerful cart grated against the quiet too much to ignore. With a grunt of resignation, he slid his wallet into his back pocket and crossed the square. A small chalkboard read, "Today's mood, caffeinated, and slightly dangerous." He almost smirked. "Morning." The woman chirped without looking up. "What can I get started for you?" Leo hesitated. "Just a black coffee." That made her look up. Her eyes were a stormy hazel, equal parts amused and curious. "No frills, huh? You must be new. Most folks around here start their day with something pumpkin spiced and overly optimistic." "I'm not most folks." She raised an eyebrow, already pouring the brew. Clearly, he watched her work efficient, confident. She slid the cup toward him and leaned on the counter with a casual ease. "You're the guy who took over the old cobbler's place, right? Hart and 𝐾. That's me." She tilted her head. Leo Hart. His jaw tightened reflexively. Yeah, a pause. Not judgment, but a flicker of recognition. He waited for the question, the one that always came next. About his past, his time inside, the rumors. But she just smiled and said, "I'm Evie, coffee boss, cinnamon queen, and sole operator of espresso yourself. Welcome to Maplewood." He took the cup, nodding once. "Thanks." As he turned to leave, she called after him, "Hey, Leo." He glanced back. "If that sign of yours ever gets crooked again, I know a guy with a power drill and zero coordination. I hear he's new in town." His lips twitched an involuntary, almost forgotten smile. "I'll keep that in mind." Back at his shop, Leo sipped the coffee. Strong. No nonsense, just like her. He stood by the window for a long minute, watching Evie laugh with the next customer, her eyes crinkling at the corners. He hadn't expected warmth. He certainly hadn't expected sass. But as the square came alive around him, Leo realized something strange. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like an outsider. And that was dangerous. Chapter 3. A karting crisis storm rolled in faster than the forecast promised, coastal winds howling through Maplewood, turning umbrellas inside out and sending cafe chairs skittering across the square. Most shops had already locked up for the night, their windows glowing dimly behind drawn blinds. But Espresso Yourself stood defiantly under the string of fairy lights, closed but still standing. Leo was in the back of his shop when he heard the sound. Not thunder. Not wind. Glass. Breaking. He froze mid-step, instincts flaring to life before thought could catch up. Into strides, he reached the front window and peered through the sheets of rain. The cart, Evie's cart, one of the side windows had been shattered, shards of glass glinting like jagged teeth under the streetlight. The canvas flap whipped violently in the wind, exposing the stainless steel interior. A figure in a dark hoodie was hunched near the back door, fiddling with the latch. Leo didn't hesitate. He was out the door before grabbing a coat, moving like a shadow across the soaked pavement. His steps were silent, his body remembering things it wasn't proud of remembering. He got close enough to see the intruder, a lanky teen. Nervous, clearly no pro. Just a kid looking for something easy. Leo cleared his throat. The teen spun, eyes wide. For a moment, they stared at each other, one panicked, the other unreadable. Leo didn't raise his voice. He just said, low and calm, "Go home." The kid bolted, sneakers slapping the pavement. Leo didn't chase him, just watched him disappear into the dark. Then turned his attention to the damage. The back lock had been forced halfway open. Leo knelt down, examining the twist in the latch. He shook his head. Sloppy work. Would have held with a better hinge. Rain poured harder. He stood and unrolled his coat, draping it over the shattered window to keep more water from getting inside. Then he jogged back to his shop. He could have called Evie. He did in single quotes T. Instead, he gathered his kit, screwdrivers, picks, a replacement latch he hadn't touched in months, and returned to the cart. Under the beating rain and sputtering fairy lights, he worked with practiced ease, his hands steady. He removed the damaged lock and installed the new one. Then he swept up the glass and pulled the canvas flap down tight, sealing the tear with temporary tape. By the time he was done, the rain had softened to a drizzle, and the square was empty again. Leo stood for a moment, staring at the cart. The name still read Espresso Yourself in bold, curly lettering, slightly faded now. He reached up and untangled a strand of fairy lights, looping it back over the awning where it belonged. He didn't expect thanks. He didn't want it. This wasn't about being seen. This was about doing one thing right. He turned and walked back across the square, water sloshing in his boots, shoulders hunched. In the quiet hush of post-storm Maplewood, Leo Hart locked his shop door behind him and went to bed without a word. Chapter 4. Espresso and gratitude. Next morning, the sun emerged like nothing had happened, casting warm gold across Maplewood Square. Birds chirped, shopkeepers swept their stoops. Life resumed with small-town steadiness. Evie Brooks, however, stood in front of her cart, hands on her hips and brow furrowed, staring at the clean sweep of glass where a jagged hole had been just hours earlier. The window was whole, the back lock replaced. The canvas flap patched and taut. She narrowed her eyes. No note, no fanfare, just fixed. She knew who it had to be. There weren't many people in Maplewood who could replace a specialty lock in the middle of the night, and there was only one person knew enough to not make a big deal about it. Across the square, Leo was crouched in front of his shop's display window, adjusting a tiny brass deadbolt. He didn't glance up, but he felt her approaching. Her presence was like cinnamon, warm and impossible to ignore. "Morning," she said, arms crossed. "Did you break into my cart last night just to fix it?" He didn't look up. "No breaking. The lock was already broken." She tilted her head, watching him. "You saw the damage." "Saw someone causing it," he said simply. Scared him off. Her arms uncrossed slowly. "You okay?" "Fine. You didn't get involved, right?" He gave her a look. "I replaced a lock, Evie, not exactly a high-speed chase." She chuckled under her breath, then sobered. "Still, you didn't have to do that." Leo stood, wiped his hands on a rag. "Didn't do it for thanks." "Well, tough," she said. "You're getting some anyway." Before he could reply, she marched back to the cart, pulled out a takeaway cup, and scribbled something on the side. She poured fresh, dark roast just how he liked it, then walked back over and handed it to him. Scrawled on the cup in her loopy handwriting, "Official espresso yourself, hero. 1 week free coffee." Leo stared at it like it might explode. "I don't need." "It's not a gift," she interrupted. "It's a bribe, so I can sleep at night knowing my cart won't fall apart." His lips quirked, despite himself. "You're terrible at accepting help. I'm a pro at caffeine-based contracts." She shot back. "Don't argue, just drink." He took the cup, fingers brushing hers briefly. "Thanks," she grinned. "Now you're officially part of the square. Don't make it weird." As she walked back to her cart, Leo watched her go, steam curling from the coffee in his hands. For the first time, the square felt less like enemy territory and more like familiar ground. Like maybe, just maybe, he was allowed to be here. He took a sip. Strong, bold, just like her. And somehow, better than any cup he'd had in years. Chapter 5. Cracks in the shelf. Days that followed fell into a rhythm. Mornings started with a cup of coffee, handed over with a smirk and a sarcastic comment, and evenings ended with Leo tightening bolts or replacing hinges on Evie's ever-worn cart. She claimed it was falling apart, but Leo knew better. Half of the repairs she requested were minor things she could have easily handled herself. He didn't call her out on it. Truth was, he didn't mind. He was beginning to like the easy banter. The way her presence settled something restless in him. There was comfort in the scent of espresso, the sound of her laughter carried by the wind, the way she'd always greet him with a raised brow and some smart remark that made him forget everything else for a moment. One afternoon, he was crouched under the cart adjusting the axle when Evie popped her head out the window. "So tell me, Leo, you fix locks, leaky hoses, broken espresso knobs. Do your talents also include ghost busting or exorcisms? Because I'm pretty sure the milk frother is haunted." Leo chuckled under his breath. "I'll add it to the list." Evie tilted her head, watching him work. The sun caught the lines in his face, the way his hands moved with quiet precision. "You always this handy. Comes with the territory," he muttered, tightening a bolt. She leaned against the cart side, arms crossed. "What territory is that?" He hesitated. "Let's just say, I used to know how to take things apart. Now I'm learning how to put them back together." Evie didn't press. She never did, not directly. But there was something in the way she watched him now, curious, not cautious. "Not everyone offered that. You've got magic hands," she said teasingly, trying to lighten the moment. "You could probably fix a broken heart if someone handed it to you wrapped in duct tape." He looked up at her, caught off guard by the words and by the flicker of vulnerability behind her smile. There was something else beneath her sass, something more guarded than she let on. "Depends on how many pieces it's in," he said softly. Their eyes locked for a beat too long, the air charged with something unspoken. Evie straightened suddenly, brushing imaginary flour off her apron. "Anyway, You want a refill? Or are you one of those mysterious types who only drinks 1 cup a day and broods the rest of the time? Leo stood, dusting off his jeans. I'll take a refill, she grinned. Thought so. He followed her to the cart window. Their steps quiet, familiar. Something had shifted, not loudly, not suddenly, but like a slow crack forming in old stone, and neither of them seemed in a hurry to seal it shut. Chapter 6, Secrets in the Steam. It started with a whisper at the book nook, Maplewood's cozy little bookstore, where gossip was exchanged more generously than paperbacks. I heard he did time, murmured Mrs. Langley, leaning over the counter as she paid for a crime novel. Something about safecracking. You know, like in those heist movies. Evie, picking up her coffee beans from the back shelf, froze mid-step. Safecracking. She didn't ask, not yet, but she felt it curling around her chest like a vine. A quiet question, clinging. That afternoon, she was back behind the cart, tamping espresso, her hands moving by muscle memory. But her mind kept drifting, the way Leo never talked about before, the way he avoided crowds, the precision in his hands. It all fit too well. She glanced across the square. There he was standing in his doorway, tightening a bolt on the shop's hanging sign. Calm, focused, alone. She didn't want to care, but she did. Later, when the square had emptied and twilight spilled gold over the rooftops, she found herself walking to his shop, 2 cups in hand. No plan, no script, just questions and too much caffeine. Leo looked up as she approached. His sleeves rolled to the elbow, sawdust clinging to his shirt. Twice in one day, he said with a soft smirk. Careful, you'll ruin your mysterious persona. I came to return the favor. She held out the coffee. Strong, no frills, just how you like it. He took it, nodding his thanks, but his eyes searched her face. Something wrong. Evie leaned against the doorframe, sipping from her own cup. Someone said something today. At the bookstore, Leo's expression didn't change, but his shoulders stiffened. Let me guess, they said you used to crack safes. Silence stretched between them, and that you went away for it. Leo looked down, took a long breath, then met her eyes. Yeah, I did. Evie didn't flinch. Want to tell me about it? He hesitated, but something in her voice steady, not accusing, nudged him open. I was good at it, he said simply. Too good. Fell in with the wrong people when I was 20. I was young, angry, and it felt like control, I guess, like I finally had power over something. He looked away. It caught up with me. Got caught, did time, and before my mom passed, I promised her I'd change. So here I am, fixing things instead of breaking them, trying to be better. Evie nodded slowly, watching the man in front of her. Thank you for telling me. You're not scared off. I've dated worse, she said with a small smile. At least you fix what you break. Leo let out a low laugh, surprised. Evie, why are you really here? She looked at him for a long beat. Because I think we've both got pasts we don't talk about. And maybe this, she gestured between them, deserves a little honesty. A quiet past. Not uncomfortable, just true. Leo tipped his cup toward her. To honesty. Then, she tapped hers against his, and second chances, as the steam rose between them. So did something else. Trust, quiet and tentative, brewing slowly in the soft light of evening. Chapter 7. A taste of trust. Maplewood's annual Autumn Arts and Kindness Festival was just around the corner, and Evie had been working double shifts to prep a seasonal drink menu that featured everything from sweet potato lattes to a daring new invention, the apple cider espresso float. Still, her mind wasn't on whipped cream or syrup ratios. It was on the quiet man who now stood beside her most mornings, sipping coffee like it was a lifeline. Leo had become part of her rhythm, and that scared her more than she cared to admit. So when the local organizer stopped by her cart asking for support with the town's new initiative, a Second Chance Saturday for rehabilitated individuals trying to start over, Evie didn't hesitate. We'll donate drinks, she said, and I'll help organize. Actually, I know someone who should be involved. That evening, Evie showed up at Leo's shop just after closing, a clipboard in hand and nerves buzzing under her skin. He opened the door before she could knock, sensing her presence the way he always seemed to. "You don't usually come bearing paperwork. Should I be worried?" She laughed, holding up the clipboard. "I need your help." He stepped aside to let her in, the scent of sawdust and machine oil mixing with her cinnamon perfume in the warm, close air. "It's for the festival," she explained, pacing a little. "They're doing this thing called Second Chance Saturday. Local businesses are sponsoring job booths, mentoring tables, even donation drives for people with criminal records trying to start over." Leo raised a brow. "And you thought of me?" She stopped pacing and looked at him, eyes clear. "Yeah, you've done the work. You've rebuilt. You're already doing it. And people listen to you more than you think." He leaned against his counter, arms crossed. "Evie, I'm not a poster child. I'm not asking you to be," she said gently. "I'm asking you to show up. Maybe talk to one person who needs to hear that starting over doesn't mean erasing your past, it means building something new on top of it." He didn't answer right away. His gaze dropped to the floor, jaw tight. "What if I mess it up? What if I say the wrong thing? Or they see right through me? Then they'll see a guy who's honest," she said quietly. "And that's more than most people give." A long silence followed. Then, slowly, Leo reached for the clipboard. "I'll help," he said. "But I'm not wearing a name tag." Evie grinned. "Deal. I'll handle the sparkle. You handle the locks." As they stood side by side, planning an event built on redemption and new beginnings, something shifted against something deeper this time. Leo wasn't just helping. He was allowing himself to be seen. And Evie, she was finally letting someone in. Chapter 8. The kiss that wasn't supposed to happen. The festival arrived with crisp air, caramel apples, and fairy lights draped across every storefront. Music drifted from the gazebo in the town square, and booths buzzed with live local artisans selling honey and candles, kids with painted faces chasing each other between stalls, and a special table labeled Second Chance Saturday meant by Leo and a few others. He wore his usual flannel, sleeves rolled, but something in his posture had changed, more open, more grounded. Evie caught herself watching him too long, more than once. He looked at ease for the first time since she met him, and it made her heart ache in the best and worst ways. By late evening, the crowds thinned, and the town grew quieter under the glow of string lights. Evie closed up her cart slowly, organizing syrups and cleaning out milk pitchers by muscle memory. The square was almost empty when Leo appeared beside her, the paper cups in hand. "Thought you might want one last cup," he said, holding out the hot cider she'd been eyeing all day. She smiled, brushing her windswept hair from her face. "You've been reading my mind now. Only the parts that smell like cinnamon." They leaned against the cart, sipping quietly. A breeze rustled the fairy lights overhead. Neither of them spoke for a while. There was no need. Finally, Evie broke the silence, her voice softer than usual. "You were good today. Talking to those folks. You didn't just show up, you showed up." Leo looked down into his cup. "Didn't think I could, but they reminded me a lot of myself. Only difference is someone gave me a shot." She nudged his shoulder gently. "You gave yourself the shot, Leo. You just let someone hold the door open." Their eyes met, and the air between them shifted heavier, charged. He reached out slowly, brushing a stray eyelash from her cheek. "You always do that." "What?" She breathed. "Walk into people's lives and change everything without meaning to." She laughed quietly, barely a sound, only when they deserve it. There it was again, that pull neither of them had named, but both had felt for weeks. And suddenly, without another word, Leo leaned in, just enough, just slowly enough, that she could stop him if she wanted to. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that was far from polished. It was tentative, honest, and full of every unspoken thing they'd built between sips of coffee and shared glances. A collision of fear and longing, gentleness and heat. When they finally pulled apart, Evie's breath caught in her throat. "That wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. Leo nodded slowly, eyes still on her. "No, but it did." They stood there, hearts racing under the warm light of a sleepy town square. And neither of them said another word. Chapter 9. Brewing doubts the morning after the kiss. Evie arrived at her cart earlier than usual. The square was still half asleep, mist curling around the cobblestones like something uncertain, unformed. She busied herself wiping down the espresso machine, organizing sugar packets, anything to keep her hands moving and her mind quiet. But her thoughts kept circling back to Leo, to the way his lips had tasted faintly of cider, to how steady his hands had been. Even as hers trembled. It had been perfect, too perfect. And that terrified her. By the time Leo crossed the square, coffee in hand, the cart was already open, steam hissing, the aroma of cinnamon wafting into the breeze. He paused just outside her window, hesitating for the first time in days. "Morning," he said, voice a little too careful. "Morning," she replied. "I's not quite meeting his." She handed him a black coffee without a word, and he accepted it silently. The banter was gone. The comfort, the quiet ease they'd built felt replaced by something taut and fragile. He lingered, as if waiting for her to say something, but she didn't. Not really. Just a half smile, a too cheerful "enjoy your day," and a glance back toward the espresso machine that demanded her full attention. Leo walked away slowly, the warmth of the coffee in his hands doing little to ease the cold knot growing in his chest. The next few days followed the same uneasy rhythm. She was polite, kind, even, but distant, like someone had drawn an invisible line between them and dared him to cross it. Leo hated games, but this didn't feel like one. It felt like fear, and he knew the signs because he wore the same expression once, looking into the mirror after he got out. That same look of "don't get too close, or I'll ruin it." He tried to give her space, but the space between them only grew heavier. On the fourth day, she slipped a note into his usual coffee sleeve. Not a love note, not an apology, just 7 words, scribbled in quick, slanted handwriting. "I'm not good at this part, sorry." Leo folded the note into his palm, holding it tighter than he should have. He didn't need an explanation. He just needed her to believe in them the way he was starting to believe in himself. But for now, all he could do was wait, and hope the warmth would return. Chapter 10. Shadows from the wolf clouds over Maplewood darkened again, but this time, it wasn't rain that was coming. Leo was behind the counter of Hart and 𝐾𝐿, replacing pins in a stubborn lock cylinder. When the bell over the door jingled, he glanced up, expecting a customer. But the man who stepped in wasn't from Maplewood. Tall, wiry, leather jacket too thin for the season, and eyes like a blade sharpened by bad choices. "Leo Hart," the man said with a grin. "Didn't think I'd find you in a place with pastel-painted benches and cinnamon lattes." Leo's entire body stiffened. "Trevor," he said, voice low. "Trevor McLean, from the old crew." A ghost he thought he'd buried along with the life he left behind. "I was just passing through," Trevor said, stepping closer, eyes roaming the shop. "Nice setup, tools, inventory. You've gone full Boy Scout." Leo crossed his arms. "What do you want?" Trevor smiled like a man who had all the time in the world. "We've got something lined up, real clean. One job, no mess. You win." Leo didn't answer. He didn't have to. His eyes said enough. Trevor clicked his tongue. "Didn't peg you for the sentimental type. You're hiding behind your shiny new life now. The cart girl. She know who you are." A muscle in Leo's jaw twitched. "Don't talk about her." Trevor laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Still got fire in you." "Huh. Good. You'll need it." He leaned in, voice cold now. "Say no. And I can't promise nothing around here stays untouched. Accidents happen. Locks fail. You know how it goes." Leo stared at him, and for the first time in a long time, the old anger threatened to rise, but he didn't let it. He couldn't. "Get out," he said. Trevor lingered, smirking. "You'll change your mind." The door slammed shut behind him. Leo stood frozen in the quiet, the ticking of the wall clock suddenly too loud. He'd built a new life, brick by brick, but now the cracks were showing, and worst of all, Trevor was right about one thing. He had something to lose now. Someone. Evie. And if the past came back with fists instead of whispers, Leo wasn't sure he'd be strong enough to keep her out of the crossfire. Chapter 11. Espresso yourself and the truth. Evie knew something was wrong the moment Leo stopped showing up for coffee. It wasn't just the absence of his quiet smile, or the way he used to linger by her cart like he belonged there. It was the silence, the shift, the way even the wind felt different when he wasn't around. On the third day, she marched across the square, apron still dusted with cocoa powder, determination flaring behind her eyes. She found him inside Hart and 𝐾𝐿, hunched over his workbench, jaw clenched, tools scattered like he'd been working without a plan. "Leo," she said, voice firm. He looked up, startled. "Hey, don't hate me," she snapped. "What's going on?" He didn't answer right away, just wiped his hands and stared at the floor. Evie crossed her arms. "You haven't been to the cart. You've barely looked at me. You're not hiding, you're pulling away. I know the difference." Leo's eyes darkened. "It's not you. Then what is it?" Silence again, tighter, sharper. Finally, he exhaled. "Someone from my past showed up. Trevor McLean. He was part of my old crew." Evie's heart stuttered. What did he want? A job, one last score. Said if I didn't do it, there'd be consequences. Evie blinked, her body suddenly cold. What kind of consequences? Leo shook his head, pain flickering in his eyes. "He threatened you. The cart, this town," said locks break easy. "You know the irony." He gave a bitter laugh. "I spent years learning how to break into things. Now I fix them. And all it takes is one ghost to tear it all down." Evie stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "And what did you say to him?" "I told him no, but you didn't tell me." His shoulders sagged under the weight of her words. "I was trying to protect you." "No," she said. "You were trying to protect yourself from needing someone, from trusting someone enough to share the weight." Leo looked up, and for the first time in days, he really looked at her. "You want redemption, Leo," she said, voice trembling but steady. "Then stop running from the people who believe you deserve it. I'm not afraid of your past, but I'm damn terrified of watching you sabotage your future." He didn't speak. He just nodded, slowly, like her words had cracked something open he tried to weld shut. Evie stepped back, tears stinging behind her eyes. "Figure it out, Leo. But know this, I'm not going to stand here and be your excuse for not choosing the life you want." She turned and walked out into the fading light, leaving behind the scent of cinnamon and courage and Leo. Leo finally realized what was truly at stake. Not his freedom, his heart. Chapter 12. The Lockpick and the Loyalty. Maplewood's Fall Festival had always been a celebration of community bonfires, hay rides, apple pie contests. But this year, beneath the festive lanterns and laughter, Leo moved like a shadow with purpose. Trevor was back, and this time he wasn't bluffing. After Evie's confrontation, Leo had done what he'd never thought he'd do again, reached out for help. Detective Ruiz, an old contact from his parole days, didn't even hesitate. "You sure about this, Hart?" Ruiz had asked, sitting in the back room of the locksmith shop. "You're putting yourself in the middle of a sting." Leo had nodded, firm. "I'm done running, but I'm not letting him touch what I've built, or who I care about." Now, with the town square glittering under harvest lights, Leo stood in the crowd, eyes scanning every corner. He'd agreed to let Trevor believe he was in just long enough for the exchange to happen. A mock blueprint for a vault job, a fake payout promised, all of it designed to draw him out. Trevor arrived just before sunset, blending in with the crowd in a hoodie and smug grin. Leo approached him near the pumpkin carving tent, handing over the fake plans in a manila folder. "You sure about this?" Trevor said, eyeing the folder. Leo's voice was calm. "Just like old times, right?" What Trevor didn't see were the officers trailing him from a distance. What he didn't know was that the cart he threatened now had eyes watching from every direction. The moment he opened the folder, the takedown began. Uniformed officers surrounded him, quiet but firm. Trevor didn't resist, just laughed bitterly as cuffs clicked around his wrists. "I should have known," he muttered. "You really went soft." "Huh." Leo didn't flinch. "No, I just finally figured out what matters." As Trevor was led away, the crowd barely noticed a caught up in cider tastings and live music. But Leo stood still, heart pounding, until Ruiz clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You did good," the detective said. "You really done with that life." Leo glanced across the square, where Evie stood behind her cart, apron dusted with flour, watching everything from afar. Their eyes met, and for the first time in days, she didn't look away. "I think I finally am," he said later that night. After the booths closed and the lanterns flickered low, Leo walked quietly across the square. The cart was dark, closed for the night, but taped to the front was a small note, scribbled in Evie's familiar scrawl. "You didn't just fix the lock this time, you protected it." And below that, in smaller letters, "Come by tomorrow. I'm brewing something better than coffee." Leo smiled for real, because for once, he hadn't just locked a door behind him, he'd opened one. Chapter 13. The apology roast. Next morning, the square felt softer, slower, like Maplewood itself was exhaling. The aftermath of the fall festival left a trail of golden leaves and half-packed booths, but Espresso Yourself was already open, fairy lights twinkling under the soft grey sky. Leo hadn't slept much. He'd replayed everything: Trevor's arrest, the look in Evie's eyes, the note on the cart. He still wasn't sure he deserved her. But he couldn't stay away. When he finally stepped into the square, he stopped short. A small crowd had gathered around Evie's cart. There was a chalkboard sign leaning against the cart's leg that read, "The Apology Roast, 1 day only. Strong coffee for stronger hearts," featuring the locksmith blend. Leo blinked. Evie, in her flour-dusted apron and red bandana, looked up and caught his eye. She smiled, not the flirty smirk she used when teasing him, but something gentler, fuller, forgiving. He approached slowly. The cart smelled like vanilla and toasted almonds. "You named a roast after me?" he asked. She raised a brow. "Well, you have a complicated flavor profile, dark, intense, takes time to brew properly." The crowd chuckled, but it was the warmth in her voice that reached him, not mockery, celebration. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You don't have to say anything," she said, handing him a cup. The sleeve read, "For Leo, locksmith to the heart." His fingers brushed hers as he took it, and for a moment, they just stood there. No walls, no fear, just the sound of frothing milk and quiet understanding. The townspeople, once cautious of the new guy, came up to shake Leo's hand, to thank him for what he did. A teenager who'd watched the whole sting said, "You're kind of a badass." An elderly woman offered him a secret biscotti recipe, just in case you and the coffee girl ever open a place together. He laughed, overwhelmed, but in the best way. As the morning wore on, Leo helped Evie serve coffee. No talk of the past, no mention of Trevor, just stolen glances, shared smiles, and warmth, the kind he hadn't felt in years. When the crowd finally dwindled, Evie leaned against the cart, sipping her own cup. "I figured," she said softly, "if I couldn't roast you with words, I'd do it with beans." Leo chuckled. "You're incredible, you know that." She looked at him, serious now. "You're here. You stayed. You protected what matters. That's more than enough." He took a long sip of the blend she'd named after him. It was bold, smooth, with a hint of something sweet at the end. Just like hope. And for the first time in his life, Leo didn't feel like someone seeking redemption. He felt redeemed. Chapter 14. Unlocking forgiveness. The bell above Hart and 𝐿𝐴 chimed softly as the wind carried in the scent of late autumn smoke, spice, and distant sea air. Leo stood behind the counter, staring at the small box in his hands. Mahogany, sanded smooth, edges rounded with care. It wasn't much, but it was honest, and it was his. He had made it for her. But still, he hesitated. It had been a week since the apology roast. A week since he felt the weight of the town's acceptance. A week since Evie had smiled at him. Forgiveness was something simple, something she could give with both hands. And yet, Leo still questioned, if he was worthy of it. Until now, late afternoon light slanted through the trees as he crossed the square. The cart was closed for the day, the fairy lights unlit, but Evie was still there, seated on the back step, nursing a to-go cup and staring up at the changing sky. She heard his footsteps before she saw him and turned. Leo stopped a few feet away, box in hand. "I've been working on something," he said, voice low. "Not sure it's much, but it's for you." Evie blinked in surprise as he stepped forward and held out the box. She took it carefully, fingers grazing his dot. Inside was a hand-cut key, tied with a thin red ribbon. She lifted it gently, brow furrowing. "It doesn't open anything," Leo said. "At least, not a door." Evie looked up, eyes questioning. "It's a key to whatever we make next," he said, voice unsteady, but sure. "I know I've made mistakes, big ones, but I'm not running from them anymore." "I'm not running from you." Tears pooled in her eyes before she could stop them. "I'm not asking for a reset," he went on. "I just want to keep building. With you." Evie clutched the little box to her chest, smiling through the sting of emotion. "You really made me a symbolic key." He smiled faintly. "It's what I do." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. No hesitation, no walls. Just warmth. "You know," she whispered, cheek against his chest. "For a man who used to pick locks, you're really good at asking permission." His hand found hers, their fingers locking like tumblers clicking into place. "Some doors," he murmured, "are worth waiting to be let into." Evie pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "And some people," she said, "don't need to keep asking for forgiveness they've already earned." Then she kissed him slow, deep, sure, not a beginning, not an ending, but something new they were finally brave enough to open. Together. Chapter 15. The Safecracker's redemption. A week before Christmas, snow began to fall softly over Maplewood, blanketing the square in quiet. Fairy lights twinkled from storefronts, and the town buzzed with warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. Leo stood in the back of Hart and 𝐬𝐿, fingers dusted with sawdust, heart thudding with quiet nerves. The lockbox was finished, mahogany, polished until it shone, the edges carved with delicate grooves, like tiny trails winding towards something deeper. On the lid, he'd carefully etched a single name, Evie. Inside, resting on soft velvet, was a key. It wasn't a house key or a shop key. It didn't open a safe or a vault. It was hand-forged, the bow shaped like a heart, the shaft engraved with one simple word, ours. When he arrived at Espresso Yourself, Evie was closing up for the evening, shaking out a basket of sugar packets and humming softly to herself. She looked up as he approached, smiling with that same spark he'd fallen for. "Part fire, part honey. You're early," she said. "I still owe you one gingerbread latte and half a snowflake cookie." "I brought something," he said, holding out the box. Her brows rose. "Another lock." "Sort of," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "But this time, I'm not trying to fix anything." She opened it slowly, her breath catching when she saw the key. Tears gathered, not from sadness, but from something fuller, deeper. She looked up at him. "Leo, I used to steal keys to take things that didn't belong to me," he said quietly. "But this is the first one I'm giving away, because everything I have now, this town, this life, it only works if it's ours." Evie's hand trembled slightly as she took the key. She didn't need a speech or a grand gesture. Just this man, this moment. And the choice to turn the key. She stepped forward and kissed him, slow and sweet, her nose cold against his cheek. When they parted, she whispered, "Then let's unlock it together." Snow drifted down around them, settling gently on the cart's awning and the old cobblestones beneath their feet. Leo wrapped his arms around her, and for the first time in his life, he felt entirely whole. He hadn't just changed. He hadn't just stayed. He'd been redeemed by coffee, by courage, and by the woman who saw the man behind the locks. The end.